Oh, that was years ago.
Years ago, right? But you have that
I'm
experience,
also,
which is
yeah,
helpful, I think.
right. I'm also on the board for the Door County Housing Partnership,
Okay, we'll
and
add
I'm
that
also
here.
on the Housing Attainability Committee through DCEDC.
All right, so we just add that. And then we have Marissa Downs. Marissa is she's the developer for the Shoals Development, a low to moderate income multifamily development, and experienced with some of the state and federal programs, correct, Marissa? Financing programs? I think you're muted, Marissa.
But you can hear me now, no?
Now we can hear you, Rob.
Okay,
So,
sound
okay. All right. So we do have a quorum, so we'll proceed. So we can move on with the agenda, Patrice.
Okay. So that was roll call then, Julie?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as written?
So we would need a committee member. If you agree with what's on the agenda or how it's written, you would just make a motion to approve it.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as is.
Okay, so that's made by Kay.
Yes.
And then we would need a second on that.
Second.
Second by Lauren.
Marissa's having trouble with her microphone. She just sent me a text, so she might call back in to try to connect.
Okay.
Better, just so you know.
Okay, that sounds good. Roz did the same thing, so. Okay, and then we would everybody in favor of that, approving that agenda?
Aye.
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 Okay. So it looks,
Julie, I'm sorry for interrupting. Karen, Lauren, Marissa, and Paula, could you please all unmute yourselves?
Forever or just for right now?
Forever, so that you can
Oh.
talk during the meeting. Thank you.
Okay.
oh, no, we typically what we do, Janelle, in our meetings is we mute them unless they're, because we'll have them, we'll unmute them for comments, correspondence, and then of course through the meeting, then we'll have you guys mute yourself again. So thank you. Okay, so then it was motion carried unanimously then on approving the agenda, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
All in favor?
yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
okay.
Aye.
Okay, so now we are at comments, correspondence, and concerns from the public. Julie, did we have any written correspondence?
We did not, and to be honest with you, I didn't expect any for this meeting because this is our first meeting. We may have some for the next meeting, so what we'll do is anything that comes in before the next meeting packet goes out, we'll include that correspondence in the meeting packet. And then if anything comes in after that, we'll just save it for the next meeting packet. So.
And does anybody in the public wish to make a comment? We do limit our comments to 3 minutes in all of our meetings.
Okay, so no comments.
No comments.
Okay.
So we are at discussion and action items in the agenda number 5. And we're gonna ask Julie if you'd walk us through the discussion and action items, please.
Sure. So I have a lot of documents on that I have saved here. So I just want to walk you through some of them, okay? Just bring us up to date on some things that we have in front of us. So the first document that everybody saw, and I just want to present it here in case there are any comments or questions from the committee, but I did share with you the housing study that was done last fall. let me just open this up here. And so this is the study that was done by Stantec. They had looked through and as you saw in here, they had looked at housing rates, occupancy rates, economic development, population, et cetera, and they looked at, you know, the housing that was needed for a larger area, not just Sister Bay. They had to break it down by 5, 4, 2, 3, 4, and then they also looked at kind of the capture zone, like if you know, if you could develop housing, where are you pulling people from and how much would actually be needed? They also tried to break it down to the village itself, which was a little harder. You know, just, you know, when this was put together, there were some people that disagreed with the numbers on the short-term rentals. Neither here nor there, it still shows, you know, what we're focused on is the need, the types of housing it identified. But everybody was sent that, so hopefully they have had time to look through that. I don't want to reiterate it. I don't want to waste our time going through that, but if anybody has any questions or comments specific to that from the committee, I can try and answer those, if anybody has any.
No,
Okay. So let me, so then the other thing that we had was the draft roadmap that I put together. And so what I tried to do was kind of just summarize all the thoughts and conversations that we've had so far, either committees, staff, plans that were worked on, etc., and try and put them all in a document. And this is one where I'd like to spend a little time on and kind of get your thoughts on it. So I'm just going to dig right into it, okay? So we can keep moving along here. One of the, you know, there's a lot of barriers to housing in Sister Bay, and I wish I had put this in this document, but I can put it in our next document. Basically, you know, it comes down to affordability and, you know, and quantity. There's not enough, and they're not, people can't afford them. So we, you know, we worked with Stantec, we've worked with other developers and talked about ideas and ways that we could increase affordable housing, the availability and the cost of it. And these are kind of like the roadmap that we had put together that I want to share with you and get your thoughts, because if you have ideas on it, I think we should get this in here. And I realize this is the first meeting, it might take a little more time to digest this. There's a couple things I'd like to add to this or elaborate on too, but one of the ideas when we were first looking at the housing plan, and then also subsequent meetings with developers, is this new idea of cottage housing. Houses, you know, if you're building smaller homes, they definitely are more affordable, but it's also based on the design. You know, if you have a square home, it's much more affordable than a rectangular home. The lots that we have available to us on the Wiltsey site, now that's just one property, but that property, as you read in the roadmap, the Plan Commission had wanted to be zoned R4, which means pretty small lots. So you have to be looking at smaller homes to make them fit on there. And to make them attractive, there's different ways of doing that. You see the cottage housing example here where they're kind of connected. Front porches are connected by sidewalks to increase the sense of neighborhood, to make them a little more attractive. And then parking is either off of an alley or in like a garage that multiple people share. But this was one way of keeping the homes affordable. Depending how this is done, though, sometimes it can be more expensive because you're looking at sidewalks, more sidewalks possibly, or alleys. So this is just one idea for the Wiltsey site in particular that was discussed, as well as regular style homes on that property as well, which we'll keep getting into. You saw in here too the demographics. The average household is 2.31 people. You'll see some later data that shows some people that went to a housing session, what size those families were. They need larger homes. But for those smaller families or seniors looking for housing, these smaller cottage style housing is a good affordable option for us to look at. And just real quick, you have 62.1% of your households are not married. You have a high significant, and I could pull it up here too, but I'll save it for a future document. But you have, of your single parent households, especially those that are female led, you have a very high poverty rate within female led households. So those typically have children though, and would need, you know, slightly larger homes than what we show in this example here. You know, we look at conservation design, and there's different things that, am I even sharing? I'm not even sharing with you right now. Geez, no wonder why. Sorry. You guys gotta tell me if I'm not sharing. All right. Cottage style housing, that's what we were talking about right there, that first one. All right. And then we go into the conservation design. So we had looked at some options too, or talked about with developers and research on ways to maximize affordability. And, you know, number one was the cottage design or option A, which was the cottage design we just talked about. You know, ways to keep it affordable were slab versus full foundation. Here, if you do a full foundation up there, especially, you're probably blasting, which really adds to your cost. So, you know, builders said, you know, slabs are the way to go. I had questioned them, you know, my experience with slabs was bad, and they're like, it's not like that anymore. You know, they use foam, and, you know, it's actually works. They're doing the homes that you see in Sturgeon Bay that are in that housing project that the city is sponsoring are actually on slab right now. Square homes, of course, maximize affordability. Cottage housing neighborhood, the courtyard, you know, which we had just showed in the previous photo, would be aligned with option A. And then sharing off-site parking or the lot shelter or garage. And you'd have a variety of sizes, you know, 25 by 25, 30 by 30, 35 by 35. Again, just keeping with that square shape for maximum affordability. And then again, recommending the community character or neighborhood design, front porches, uniform landscaping, kind of that cottage style that we saw. Option B would be more of your traditional neighborhood. Again, slabs are recommended instead of full foundation for affordability. Square homes preferred, optional garage or carport behind the home, shared driveways or the garages to the rear to save on infrastructure and open space. For deeper lots, more than one home per lot, where you could have an accessory dwelling unit. We know that we do have families up here that have the mother or other in-laws living with them. So the accessory dwelling unit would allow them to have their family on site with them. Those are a little more expensive, of course, than if you just have one home, but there are ways to keep that affordable. You know, if their lots are small and the area is densely populated, we recommend community parks. And then again, looking at reducing road setbacks, requiring some uniformity to make it like an old traditional neighborhood again. Option C is the mixed residential, ranches or duplex. Consider zero lot line design, possibly townhouses. Option D is custom, where you have some lots that are for custom, you know, design. And then option E is multifamily. On the Wiltsey site, that is something that I think we should talk about later, because we do have some options for multifamily elsewhere if we recommend that. And then option F is just making sure we talk about J1 visa housing. And we go through some ideas right there on possible scenarios for J1 visa housing. In the roadmap, you know, we look at building smarter. You know, I cite an article in here that talks about a way that would be cheaper to build. I did talk with our building inspector, and he said he didn't recommend it. So, you know, you see these articles, they sound really good on paper. This is a way to reduce costs, but he's like, no, you're sacrificing your quality construction. So he did not recommend against A that you see there, 1A. You know, one thing too in this article, which is under 1D, you see where they said you should consider all electric to keep homes affordable. Well, that does make it affordable for the builder, but it does not make it that affordable for the person who's buying the home. So, you know, there's some trade-offs on that. You know, are you looking at just, if you're only concerned about what it costs, you know, to keep the price of those homes down so people can afford them up front, electric is good, but in the long run, it may not be the best option. Then, of course, don't overbuild. You see some of that in there. I think when you're looking at C, you know, offsetting the costs, and again, I'm just going to talk about Wiltie at this point, but there's ways to keep the costs down if, you know, if the Board of Trustees, if we made a recommendation and the Board of Trustees went along with it. But what we did years ago when we ran sewer and water to some of the properties in the village is we deferred those sewer and water charges to a later date. And you could do the same thing here to keep costs down. So you know what the price of the lot is. And let's say to run the sewer and water, it was, I don't know, 15,000 per lot. Rather than adding that to the price of the lot right now, to keep the cost down for the homeowner, you could defer that to, let's say, when the property is sold, or 15 years. Right now, on some of the deferments we have, it was, if you had a vacant lot, we deferred it until you developed it. It took some of those properties 20 years to get developed, but now they have to pay it. But the village eventually gets that money back that they invested in that infrastructure. But up front, it keeps it affordable so somebody can actually secure the mortgage and afford the home. One option too is if you do get a grant to cover the infrastructure, that of course is, you know, a different element, but this is the scenario whereas if it's funded with tax dollars. Was there a question so far?
Julie, yeah, this is Kate. I just wanted to make individuals aware of, WIDA has a program right now that provides very low interest rate loans for infrastructure for both the homeowner as well as the municipality. The interest rate is, I believe, at 1% because of our population density for Door County. So that's part of the new legislation that came through within the last 6 months. Approximately $575 million was added to the state for affordable housing projects. And of that, 30% was designated to rural properties or counties such as Door County. So there is access to that at a very low cost that municipalities and homeowners can look into and apply for.
That's a good point. We'll talk a little bit about some of the funding that's out there. It seems like right now there's a lot of funding out there. So I mean, this is the time to do it, right? And it sounds like the WIDA one, you know, so many of the ones that I see are just to benefit the municipality. I shouldn't say just to benefit the municipality, but it's really more for government or nonprofit. But something like this, it sounds like the homeowner could actually secure it as well. Okay.
Yes, they can secure for infrastructure. There's also one that's vacant to vitality. If someone has a vacant building that they would like to turn into affordable housing. And then another one, if someone has, say, a storefront and they want to upgrade some apartments, say on the second floor, there's another loan specific to that as well. So they came out with 3 different lending options within the last, I would say, 4 months. For
Just to clarify,
people who
Kate,
want to. Yeah,
I think for the homeowner to access this, they'd have to build their own house though. Like it would have to, it's during like for the infrastructure, it would be a developer or a, you know, home builder would I think technically access the funds, not necessarily a homeowner.
correct. I was thinking, yes, if the homeowner was building, but if it's being done, you know, by a developer, they would access the funds as well as the municipality for the infrastructure.
Good. You know, at some point we will want to make a list of all the resources we have available. I have started a list. I know President Biden made a lot of proposals in some press releases in August. They haven't been adopted yet or implemented yet, some of them, but if they go through, there's a lot out there that can help us right now. And there's a lot of existing ones, right? I think one of the challenges is sometimes it's the paperwork or the red tape involved or the restrictions that are put on it that make it difficult. But that's where programs like the one Kay's with, I think, helps, which we can talk about as well. So on this one with the infrastructure, so there's ways to reduce the cost of that infrastructure to get the price of the lot down so we can actually make it more affordable. And then you know, the maximizing the home buyer funding sources is strategy B. You know, definitely first-time home buyer loans, VA loans, angel investors is something we could think about. Not, we got to be careful on that. So with an angel investor is where you have somebody actually buy the home, and then they would land contract it to the home buyer. We have to be careful on that because if you use grant funds, a lot of times you can't have investors. They won't fund investment housing. So depends how that is worked out. But there's some, and like the programs Kay and Marissa were just talking about, lots of fun home buyer funding sources that are out there. Another strategy is work with willing partners. So right now, you know, I've been maintaining a list of developers that call me. We have several developers that want to help Sister Bay develop single family homes and multifamily homes. We were working with one actually during the Stantec project who guaranteed us that he could keep the homes between 225 and 250. That's exciting because that's hard to do. You know, we don't see that anymore. We've also had, like I said, several multifamily developers say, hey, we want to help develop whatever you have. When we work with people like that, when we work with these partners, because we are government, we do have to put it out for bid. But then, you know, whoever can, you know, we look at several things, you know, depending on what that bid asks for. It's like, how many can you build? What's the design? What's the cost? Can you lock in the rate? How affordable it is it? And all those type of things that we'd end up looking at. But we do have partners. We also have partners. I had mentioned Kay, you know, Kay's group, NeighborWorks, Green Bay. We have Habitat. We have some of these other partners that we could tap into as well. And then, you know, ensuring success would be strategy D, which is making sure the home buyer actually knows what they're getting into. When you look for some programs, you know, like if you're going through a CAP agency or through a home program, a lot of times home, acronym home, which is a funding source, a lot of times they require you to go through what's called a home buyer program or credit counseling program. And I would recommend the same thing because, you know, maybe somebody can qualify for a home, but they need counseling or, you know, classes, so to speak. I don't want to call it counseling, but they need to understand what they're getting into. You know, you're going to have home costs. You're going to have lawn care costs. You're going to have snow removal costs. You're going to have taxes. You're going to have electric. Your heat's going to be more in winter. How are you going to do this? And can you budget for this? Is this really affordable for you? Or should you still be renting at this point in your life? So, those are programs that I advocate for as essential to any home buyer program. I was part of a home buyer program down in Calumet County. We started the first home buyer program down there, and that was like mandatory. If you wanted any funding, you had to go through the home buyer program to receive the funding. So something to think about, and I think it's pretty important. Other things to look at is using deed restrictions to ensure the tax dollars are not misused. You know, you want to make sure this is something the committee has talked about in the past, or the Plan Commission. was, you know, you need to look at how you're going to make sure these properties really stay in the hands of the people that need them and remain affordable. So you want to make sure they're not being used for profit, like a short-term rental. You want to make sure they're not being sold at a higher rate where they're profiting and the homes are no longer affordable. And we have seen some of that. You know, we have the data to back that up. We see that they turn over and the prices just keep increasing and they're not affordable. When we're using tax dollars to start a project, and when we're committed to a goal of providing affordable homes, we have to make sure that that continues into perpetuity. And so some type of deed restrictions should be attached to the deeds on these properties. Because the village owned, you know, if you're just talking Wilty and the ones we own along Northwoods, because the village owns that property, we are able to put deed restrictions on those lots. The village cannot put deed restrictions on anything they do not own though. So that is one way we can make sure these homes forever remain affordable. Another
Just
thing
to
is,
clarify on that, Julie, I just wanted to point out, you know, I have been working with ARPA dollars in other communities. And if you are a lender of any kind, if you're giving any grant funds or loan proceeds, you can file a deed restriction on a
Yeah.
private owner's. So there is a way to sort of force that deed restriction if you're not the owner of the land.
right. I guess, you know, as far as restricting it, so the village, so one thing that we run into is people are like, well, why doesn't the village just make people sign a deed restriction saying they're not going to do X, Y, Z? Well, we don't own the land. So the village cannot put a deed restriction on somebody's property unless we're a party to it. But you're right. Other, like a bank would put liens and, you know, there's
Right.
other people, agencies that could put deed restrictions on.
I mean, I think that your mechanism there is that they have to sign the deed restriction in order to access something, funds or some other benefit that the municipality is giving. And in
Right.
exchange for that, they sign a deed restriction that they record, you know, so that's a way to do that.
Right. Yeah, so there are ways to do it. So, and then what else do we have? Some other ideas we had was, you know, not just looking at housing, but looking at the future of our community and from a community development aspect. We do know that within a very short period of time here, we're going to lose the majority of our contractors. We're already seeing that, right? It's hard to get a plumber. It's hard to get an electrician up here. So one way of advancing community development is to also work with some of the builders that are willing to take some of the people that want to build these homes or some of the people we have here, whether they're getting in a home or not, and help train them in the trades as they are building these homes. One of the builders we had talked with last year was willing to do that. He was willing to take people in and teach them construction and, you know, basic home building skills, because we do need to build that trade and contractor pool that we have. It's retiring. We're going to be left with, we're already suffering. And it's not just Sister Bay. It's the county as a whole, but we are seeing it a little worse in our area. So looking at this, if we are building homes on there and if we have a program where we're helping people get into these affordable homes, maybe helping with the down payment or whatever it is, that we also need to look at helping improve the workforce as well, so that these people have the skills to have better paying jobs to afford the homes. The other part of that is, you know, allowing home-based businesses. And again, you have to have limitations. You know, you don't want semis parked in front of the home in a small residential neighborhood, but we would be running, you know, if we develop the Wiltsey site, we'd be running broadband throughout there. Well, that's a good opportunity for housewives or people who don't work many hours in winter to actually learn online skills, you know, whether it's taking classes or medical billing, Amazon, whatever it is, as a way to supplement their income. So by developing the property, getting the infrastructure in there where they have reliable internet, we can also help increase their incomes. So the burden of home ownership isn't as severe as it was when they actually secured that loan. It helps them develop as a person, develop their income, and then helps with the community as well. And we know too, you know, from a community standpoint, the more money you make, that gets cycled throughout the community. So there's benefits all the way around on that. So the work that's been done before. So the village did have an ad hoc property acquisition committee who did look at this, and I shared some of their thoughts in the roadmap document. But that was kind of the first group that took a deep dive into it, and they were looking, you know, really at the Wiltsey site, and they came out with some ideas that were kind of springboards or the basis to move forward. You know, looking at, you know, including, you had green space, including trails, just to make sure it wasn't a cookie cutter subdivision. They looked at some mixed use out there. From then, you know, after that, and that was shortly after we had purchased the Wiltsey property. And then, you know, from there we had the Plan Commission was involved as well. They're saying, well, you know, when this property gets developed, we think it should be R4. They had the foresight to say, you know, large lots isn't going to solve the problem. You know, we need to look at diversity. We need to look at smaller lots to try and make the homes more affordable. So the Plan Commission also last year looked at, they actually revamped their entire land division ordinance to allow for cluster design or conservation design, where you could have, if you provide certain amenities, you could increase the density and you could cluster the homes, meaning you don't need as much infrastructure. You don't need roads all the way down, or put infrastructure all the way down the road. If you're clustering the homes up front, you only have to run the road a shorter distance. Same thing with the utilities. So they've made a lot of progress in the last year trying to get to things that would make housing more affordable in Sister Bay, or at least developing more affordable homes in Sister Bay. We looked at a facilities plan. We did that this past year about saying, you know, what should be on the Wiltsey site. There were some people who said, well, maybe we need to put the administration building out there. Maybe the parks building goes out there. Facilities plan basically said, no, you need to save that for housing development or mixed use development, not government facilities. We then did the Stantec housing study, which you have in your packet, which we quickly zoomed through. They also did a conceptual design for us at that time. And basically what they did was just a real rough layout to show, you know, that you could get quite a few homes out there. And they were showing them at larger lots, like 90, some of them were 90 feet wide. But there was easily that you could easily get like 200 homes on that property at that time. But at that time too, we didn't know some of what we know now, which I'll be getting into in a little bit. And that is the EPA study that we had done on the property.
Julie,
We
can I
did
say
a big-
something?
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, this is Lauren. I was on the Wiltsey committee, and this is going back to number 1, but it says there was never a formal document or proposal that came from the group. I don't think
Right.
that's true. I'm pretty sure there was something in writing. I know there was another study done, not by Stantec, but someone else. And then it kind of, I mean, everything changed when a new president was elected, but I'm pretty sure there was a document that was created. I mean, we met for like a year and a half. But
Yes, we did get some notes. Miles Danhausen, who was one of the members, he did a really good job summarizing it. He got that to us last December. I don't think it was discussed at the committee. There was no meeting to approve that, but he did summarize it, which we use as kind of like the summary document of what happened there. I don't think it was committee. I don't think there was a report that came out of committee. I think what we have is what Miles had summarized for us. But Lauren, if you have something, share it with us.
yeah, I'll take a look in my email, but I mean, we put a lot of time into that committee, so I can't imagine there's like nothing that evolved, that nothing evolved from it. So
there's good stuff that evolved from that. There was like a concept plan of where stuff could be, you know, like multifamily here, housing here. They gave a lot of thought to it. And like I said, that information that we have from that committee kind of set that basis where they're like, you need green space, you know, it'd be nice to have a trail. Yeah, and so
Mhm.
all of that, those ideas then were incorporated into the next layer or the next plan that Stantec had looked at.
Okay,
So, but there wasn't like a adopted plan that got sanctioned or something that we're aware of. But if there was, send it to us because we'll use that as well.
okay,
But, so there's been a lot of work on it, a lot of people working on it so far. Then we came down to stakeholder input, last December. We had 70 families show up at, families that were looking to buy a home. We had 70 of them show up and they gave us their ideas, you know, what would they like to see in a subdivision? What would they like to see in the home? And this kind of helped us narrow down a little further. So you had that initial group, the ad hoc group, come up with some, you know, ideas about the design. And then you had, it kept breaking down where now you had details about, okay, well, in the subdivision, this is what we would like to see, or this is what type of home we would like to see. So there's been a lot of work into it. There's been a lot of layers put into it to get us where we are. Now we come to some of the issues that we had with the property. You know, one problem we had is the DNR had said to us, had said to this past year in over the winter, they said, you know, there's some small depressions out there. They could have wetland soils. You should really get them tested. So we had Stantec go out there and do a wetland delineation. And the wetland delineation showed there's no wetlands out there. So that was good. We were a little concerned about the site, and Stantec, who is one of our engineering firms, they're a consultant who helped with the plan and everything. They said they were aware of a Environmental Protection Agency grant that Bay Lake Regional Plan Commission had. And so we worked with Stantec and Bay Lake, and they did an EPA assessment. And basically what that assessment found was they did 100 and some soil borings out there. All of the soil borings showed lead in the soil. Not to be alarmed. We have a lot of lead up here in our soil. It was all at acceptable levels. So we don't really have to worry about that. But what we did have was, just trying to find all my, okay, and everybody can see this map too?
Yep.
Okay. So these are all the soil borings. This is, you know, wherever you see a number where they did the test where we found lead. But then what we found in this corner here was arsenic. And this exceeds acceptable levels. So that kind of changed things, right? I know original designs, I think that came out of the first group. And then even when we had the consultant look at it, originally we were thinking, well, you know, let's put townhouses or apartments along here. And this shows that, you know, you got to think hard, you got to think about what goes here, because there's certain things you can do with those soils. We can cap them, you know, and develop on top of them. So you can put apartments on top of them. That's fine. But you'd probably want to make sure they're like senior housing or J1 housing, because I don't think you'd want children, you know, you wouldn't want housing where you have kids outside playing on there. We could pull that dirt off, move it elsewhere and cap the dirt. That gets pretty expensive. Or maybe this becomes parking. Maybe it becomes parkland. You know, pickleball or something where you don't have people playing in soil or something. But basically it kind of impacts some of the original thoughts on how this property would get developed. Now that we know there's arsenic on this corner of the property. The other thing that wasn't known when this project was first looked at was this area here cannot easily be served with sewer and water without great expense. You're going to need a lift station, you're going to need a well booster, some of those things. So the thought was, or at least at a staff level and in talking with the engineer, is, you should really focus on developing this area first. You do want to put a road, you know, so you have in and out, but this is really the area that you should be focusing on. Let's complicate that a little bit though. You have to put a stormwater pond in here. You can't put it up here because the elevation is too high. And there is a buffer around the wastewater treatment plant. The village can give themselves a variance to build closer. Gets smelly once in a while, so maybe this becomes the park, I don't know, but the amount of land available to develop on Wiltsey is not as great as originally thought. So, like I said, the Plan Commission had that foresight I was talking about earlier to say, hey, you need 40, 45-foot lots. Well, now that you know the space is much less than originally anticipated, it really makes sense to have 40, 45-foot lots. If you go in there with large lots, you're not going to get a lot of lots on that property. So, so then I'm just going to move on real quick. So we talked a lot about Wiltsey. I want to talk about some of the other properties the village had or has. Some of the things they've done to try and help with the housing problem. There were 10 lots out on Ava Hope, Northwoods and Ava Hope. And they did sell them to the Door County Housing Partnership at a reduced rate. Those lots had a value of $54,000, and we sold them to the Housing Partnership at $10,000 a lot to try and make it more affordable for the homes that they could offer. This is a really good program. They've only got one house started so far out there, but you know, if we end up going for grant money or something to incentivize housing, this is one area we might want to look at. Now, they have their program, but to incentivize more people taking advantage of that program, we could provide additional down payment assistance if it worked out, if we had the grant money for that. The other thing is multifamily. At the corner of Ava and Northwoods, you see we own what's in orange here. We had talked about a park out here. Don't know where that would be, but this is what we own. This kind of cuts it off, but right here is our stormwater pond. And let me just pull up let me pull this over here. Can you see the GIS map that I have up? Everybody?
Yep.
Okay, so you can
Yes.
see the GIS map. So I have the contours on here, and you can see that along Northwoods, it's much higher than it is down by this pond. This kind of keeps dropping as you go down. So, you know, if these properties were made available for multifamily, whether that's townhouses, apartments, or whatever, they could be actually beautiful. You could have actually walkout leading to a park that overlooks this pond. So, you know, the village had talked about a pond. Maybe a pond becomes a public-private partnership on here. I don't know. It depends what builders are willing to do, but they could get, you know, quite a few apartments in here. One story from the road exposed on the rear because this is a slope and overlooking an area. So, you know, there's some options out there. We do have land. This is an area, you know, if the board agreed to, if we made the recommendation and the board supported it, that's an area we'd probably want to put out a request for proposals to make sure that people could bid on it, to make sure we're getting what meets our needs, is affordable, and is developed a way that we want to retain our community character.
I
The
have-
other is,
Oh, sorry, I have a question, Julie.
sure.
I'm just wondering, like, I know there's all this talk about Wilsey and I know there's a lot of space there, but like, would this area that's by the shoals and things, I mean, like the roads are here, I'm guessing the sewer and water's here. Would this be like a better place to start on a smaller scale? Or, I mean, I guess that depends on what type of structures we want, but I don't know, I just feel like there's, you know,
Sure.
less to be done to develop this than there would be with the Wilsey property.
That's a really good point. The problem is this is a very small chunk of land. It's only
Mhm.
1.84 acres and it's sloped, so you're not going to get a lot of homes out there. You know, maybe you'd have 4 or 5 homes on there. Whereas you look at that housing study, it talks about the demand, or you look at the people that showed up at that December 9th event, it's a drop in the bucket to what we need to do
Sure.
to help with our affordability crisis.
Yeah, it's
It's
unfortunate that Sister Bay is the only village that is taking this on. I feel like too, that's a whole nother issue, but you know, it's like they're the only ones that are allowing for this, but I guess that, you know, we're taking it on,
Yeah.
but it's.
You know, I agree with you, but on the flip side, we're also the only one with public sewer and water throughout the
Yeah,
village. So,
yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I'm aware of that, but I just
Yeah.
thought, you know, I mean, in theory, and maybe I'm going down a rabbit hole, but in theory, all these people do want homes, and I totally understand it. I mean, I live it every day, but I also like, you know, you were talking about people being prepared to be homeowners and the cost and, you know, down payment and stuff. It's just, I'd be curious to know how many people would really be available to like start this process when the time comes.
well, they would have to be pre-approved, right?
Mhm.
And we do have banks that have reached out to us that would like to work with us, so they would have to be pre-approved. And, you know, I think most contractors would want a pre-sale, right? They'd want a commitment that those funds are there before. I mean, obviously, they'd want a commitment before they even
Sure.
break ground
Well, a
on.
pre-approval letter from the bank is what you
Yeah.
would have.
So, you know, that Wiltsey site may be adequate for now. We don't know, but you know, the good thing with the Wiltsey site is there is room to expand, but so once you go through and do that phase when fully develop what you have now, which is quite a few lots, by the time, if and when you need the other part, you know, it can be developed. It's just going to cost you more money because you have to put in that added infrastructure. So we just have to make sure when we're developing that site that, you know, utilities are stubbed out at the end. So if you ever do have to tap into that, you can. But we may not need it. I don't know. But just a note on back to the one on, the one Marissa was talking about. So that is zoned for multifamily. There's not a heck of a lot of multifamily where we have space that can be developed. So I don't know if we'd want to sacrifice that if we can provide housing there. And you wouldn't get many houses at all, and especially with the slope too. I think with the slope, they'd end up being pretty expensive houses. But then the other thing is privately owned lots. You know, we do have some, you know, around this area here to the north and across the street. There's a couple other parcels where you can get multifamily in there or other development. But the village doesn't have any incentives. And I think that's something too that we as a committee need to look at. Should there be incentives? How do you fund, what are those incentives and how do you fund those incentives? Because like Kay was saying before, you know, and Marissa, there's a lot of programs out there to help with multifamily or to help the developer, usually some strings attached. But is there more that the village can do too to help with that? And I'm always cautious. I've always been trained that government should not be competing with private industry, right? So if you have somebody building an affordable housing development, then we should not. But if they're not, then, which they have not been doing, you know, we don't have somebody building detached single family developments, then we do have to step in. But in this case, you know, there's room. We don't have any plans. There are no plans right now in the village for anybody to develop private property with multifamily housing, but incentivizing that development may help as well. So then we just talk about, you know, recommendations to take action. You know, we have so far, the village has put 3.5 million in their capital improvement plan for infrastructure for the Wiltsey site to get it started. That's not over yet, though. That budget has not been adopted. That capital improvement plan has not been finalized. But that is in there. It was in last year. They moved it over this year. So that would help with the road and the sewer and water on just the part that's isn't as expensive to develop. And then we could start reviewing recommendation number 2 is the committee should be looking at densities on, talking about what type of density is appropriate for a certain area. That's we don't want to overdevelop and have them be undesirable areas. We want to make sure there's still a quality of life, good quality of life wherever people are living. And we don't want to provide the housing, but yet do more damage on the flip side of that. Develop funding strategies for home mortgages. We touched on that a little bit. What can we contribute? Down payment assistance, reduce lot, how does that work? Develop incentives for private landowners. We just talked about that. And then staff recommendation number 5, review the zoning code and identify barriers and solutions to housing. The Plan Commission will be working on a little of that too, but the Housing Committee was tasked with a lot, looking at a lot of different things, barriers, strategies, funding, development. I mean, you name it, if it involves addressing the affordable housing issue, it's kind of a open slate where this committee should be looking at it and addressing that. Okay. So
Julie, it seems like there's so much, like this was actually a great amount of information, and I'm glad that you put this together because I felt like it was really helpful to give a starting point. I feel like it sounds to me like there's a lot of unknowns about Wiltsey, like maybe it's worth sitting down at the next meeting and really diving into the real cost, the real, because I see here one of the first recommendation being having this hypothetical subdivision laid out. But I mean, really what we're talking about, is trying to understand the cost, how many homes you can get, what the price would be for those homes, where would they be most efficiently located in that neighborhood, et cetera. Does that seem like a really good first place to start? Because maybe it's a no, maybe it's too expensive or maybe it doesn't work, but I feel like we haven't spent enough time maybe to really dig into that and have a good conclusion.
Right. Well, I think that's if that's where the committee wants to start, I think that's a great place. I mean, what does everybody else think about that?
I agree with Marissa. I think that would be a good place to start.
I guess I'd like to look at it. I agree with Marissa wholeheartedly. My thought though, and from what I'm hearing, speaking with developers and individuals as well, is that there's a huge need out there, and we're not going to be helping the need one home at a time. So I'm really thinking that we also need to be looking at the multifamily developments, because that's where we can get the most impact in the shortest amount of time. People need affordable living spaces, and there aren't any out there. And if we're able to, build multifamily, 36, 40 units, I mean, we're helping 40 families right away. There's no way we can build 40 homes that are affordable. And also for those who might not be able to afford a home at this time, by getting into an affordable rental, having that budget counseling, working with maybe money management counselors, they're able to save and attain that home in a year or 2 or 5. And at that point, we'll also have, hopefully the Wiltsey property and others available to them. So I guess I'd like to see a 2-pronged approach to that.
Rez, what do you think?
I don't know. She was talking about renting, but I'm just thinking like rent these days, it's very up. So it's almost the same amount you pay for your house if you want to buy like a affordable house. So, because I'm renting right now, and the rent in 2 years was growing with more than $600 monthly. So I don't know. I was listening to you guys all the time, and I was thinking about, I have an idea like it's not gonna be that good to put G1s with like family with kids and older people, because I was a G1 before a long time ago, and I know how they parties, and you'll have a lot of troubles there in all that neighborhood. So you should think about maybe doing like separate for them somewhere else.
Mm.
That's what I'm thinking. Because I was living in a house 3 years ago, and the house next to us was a G1 house. And believe me, the sheriff was coming there every night. So
So
I
not
don't know.
mixing, not having intergenerational housing, but more like.
I'm okay to do for them something too, but not with mix it with families or older people, or
Mm-hmm.
I
Okay.
know, that's what I think. That's what and yeah, and I think Kay had or Marisa said, like, we can think about like to start with like 20 houses to see how it works. You see like how many people you get together, or because I'm one of the guys who want to help doing like building this, or so yeah. I think we should like meet in person one day and just talk about like more about everything, all the project.
Okay.
I don't know. That's what
I
I
think
think.
that's,
It's there
Lauren,
more to say, but
yeah, it's hard on Zoom. Lauren,
Yes.
any comments on that, on this, how to start?
No, well, kind of when I brought up that property near Ava Hope, I was thinking more of multifamily over individual homes, just because I'm aware of how the size of it, because I'm at the Shoals. But I want as many people to own homes as possible, and I know that's it opens up so much to so many people. But I mean, when you think about the population of Sister Bay, there are elderly people who are not looking for a house to buy, but they need something affordable to live in. And I'm speaking from the Shoals. And, so I do think there's still a need for rentals for people that may, I don't want to like have this argument about rentals versus home ownership, but I think we need to embrace both ways of living, because it's not everyone is looking for one or the other. And I mean, I'm just speaking again from the Shoals, which has 45 units, and we're full. So
Is there no way to do some multifamily at Wiltsey? Was that just an absolute no? Like, was that just
No,
not?
we can. It's, I know on the original concept plan, the thought was, I'm just trying to see if I have this.
And maybe it's like a lower density multifamily, right? Maybe it's not.
Well, there's, I thought I had this map up here, but, so originally the consultant had said, your multifamily could be on the outside of the development where you're coming in, because you're typically not needing some of the same amenities, or that you're not investing in, like, a home is somebody buys a home, they're investing in a lot, right? Bigger space. When you're renting, you're not investing in that lot. So on those thinner strips, so to speak, on where you come into the subdivision, if that is a subdivision, those were areas that he thought would be good for townhomes, duplexes, or apartment buildings. And we can definitely do a two-prong approach. We need to, decide what we think is best, and do our research, and then make those recommendations and move forward. One of the things that we'll get to on the agenda is, who do we want at our next meeting? We have an engineer that we have a contract with, who can help us on some things, but we got to watch what we spend, because we have a cap on what we can spend every month. But you know, we could ask him some of those questions or ask him to come to that meeting or a future meeting to discuss some of this with us, some of these ideas, like, where do you think this should go? Or, you know, kind of sketch it out for us as we talk. He's willing to do that, but he's not going to be at every meeting just to due to the cost involved with it. So it's as needed, he'll come in and help us. So. Okay, so I think, you know, so just to summarize, if I have this correctly, Marissa, you were thinking Wiltsey is a good place to start and to also look at multifamily on there. If I have this wrong, let me know, okay? Kay, you were saying do the two-prong approach and look at multifamily at the same time. Raz, you were saying made the comment, you know, rent is as much as owning sometimes, and there should be some separation between families and seniors.
No,
and
not
start
families
with-
and seniors.
Pardon me?
J1.
Just I was
J1s,
talking
not
just about J1s.
Oh,
So if you
J1.
have another
you have to be careful
land,
with fair housing too.
another option, you can build like. Yeah,
Okay.
I was talking about like right now. And yeah, I mean, and the other thing with like the shoals, like she said before, the shoals. So if you make 60,000 a year, you can go in. If you make 65,000, you can't go in. So that's a problem too for a very small difference, you know, because I know a lot of people who are renting right now at Shoals, and I don't want to be like rude or something, but some of them, they're building their house and they live on the Shoals right now. So you can't control nothing when you rent. Or one person is renting a big apartment with 3 bedrooms, and he's renting also at 2 more persons. So you can't control with renting, and you know, there are more to say, like I said, but I like to be like all together in a room, and we can talk more about things.
Sure, and we
You
can
know?
try and do that for our next meeting. One of the other things I had here done for you, Raz, was, you know, maybe we start with 20 homes and see how they go, you know.
Yeah,
as a
because
thought, too.
you'll see what help you get. You'll see how many people they'll get involved. I don't know. You'll see how fast you can put everything together so you can start. That's what I'm thinking. So
Okay. And then for Lauren, I just had here some of the comments you made was, you know, look at Ava Hope for multifamily. And then, you know, don't forget that we need to look at housing for the senior citizens as well.
Yes, that's correct. And also I did find where the Wilsey committee was presented to the board by Chad in January. So I can send those to you, Julie, but I just want to say that it was presented and there was a plan that was presented. So
Good. Yep. Send that over to me so we have all the details then.
Mhm.
All right. So the last thing I had under the discussion and action item, and this is gonna, I don't know what to do about this, you guys, but I hate to pass this up. So the Biden administration right now is trying to put as many homes out there as possible by the end of the year. And, you know, we don't want to talk politics on anything. We just want to say in August, they made this opportunity available. It's called the Pro Grant Program. And you can get up to $7 million for your project. And it looks at things as helping with the engineering, the surveying, the design, the zoning, the actual infrastructure. What it's really sold as is reducing barriers to housing. So they're willing to give money up to $7 million per applicant to reduce the barriers, which we have quite a few. And like I said, we didn't go into all of them, but you know, even the lots we have barriers, topography, arsenic, lack of sewer and water, limited availability of where you can serve. I mean, there's a lot of barriers out there. The problem is they announced it on August 15th, and it's due October 15th. So, which means it has to be done around October 10th if we apply for that grant. And I am a glutton for punishment. I feel we have to try for everything we can. One of the issues though with this grant opportunity is we have to have a plan in place. You know, we have to put something together and present it to the public for 15 days before we actually submit that application. Do I think we can do that? Yes. I mean, we summarize what we have and everything, but it's a lot of meeting time. You know, we'd probably have to meet one more time, maybe 2 more times in order to do that. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that because I am concerned the 3.5 we have is not going to go very far.
Right. Julie, I think we need to get that map, the Stantec proposed map, to everybody on this committee. They can take a look at it and tweak it or put their ideas in. And go and use that as a tool.
Let me just find that real quick because I know I had it up here.
And I know the planning commission had a lot of concerns about it. They want to have it done correctly, which is, you know, what we need to do, but for this grant's purpose, if we could expedite some of those ideas.
Because Julie, you're probably right. You don't have enough money. 3.5 is
No, that's not enough.
not enough. So if you think you can apply for funds that you think you have a shot at, you're gonna need it.
Yeah, I was quick looking for that map, but I thought I saved it on my thing, but
Well, if I remember correctly, their plan, you know, they had multifamily on the Wilsey property. They had some single family homes on that property, and they also had, like, in one of the far corners, a dorm style housing for J1 students. So there it is.
so like so this was part of the contract with Stantec was they had to come up with just a concept plan. It went to the plan commission and they're like, no, I mean, they really didn't spend time on it. They said, no, this, you know, we want to see smaller lots was the thing they picked up on right away. And they said, this should really go to the housing committee when they are formed. So there wasn't really talk about this. You know, I can give you some thoughts on this right away. Some concerns I have is, you know, the plan commission wanted to see smaller lots. So, you know, you take this number here, you can almost cut that in half, and that's how many lots you might be able to get out here. You know, they realized at that time that this area up here could not be served easily, so they put it as a phase 2. Some of the concerns I have, you know, is this community garden area. Now that we know what we know, maybe, you know, we should just support the community gardens that are proposed across the street and not actually put them, even though these people, the people, prospective stakeholders said we want community gardens. I don't think that's the best place for them. I do think they should go across the street, where we're talking about putting them on Lagerquist. You know, they did put parkland closer to where there might be some orders, which was smart. But this was kind of what they were looking at, you know, dorm style was more what they were calling J1 visa workers housing. And we don't have to tackle that right now, right? We can start with single family and apartments if that's how we want to look at it. But this was kind of just some initial thoughts they had, you know, ranch homes coming off Scandia. This granny flat were deeper lots where you would have homes with an accessory dwelling unit, either for a family member or to supplement your income by renting to somebody long-term who needs a place to live. They had cottage, which was those smaller, very affordable homes we were looking at. Townhomes, ranches, or duplex. They did show on one of the plans, they showed apartments along here. So there were 2 drafts of it, but they were looking at this area as apartments. now that we know what we know about that arsenic, yeah, this should probably be where you're putting apartments, where people are renting, where you're not gonna have people digging in the soil, growing gardens and vegetables and stuff like that. So, but this was the map that, one of the conceptual drawings that we had. Again, just a drawing, starting off point to say, hey, this is what you could do. As you can see, there is room. And then, of course, you know, they incorporated some of those ideas from the ad hoc group about, you know, the trails and the green space and mixing it up a little bit. But so going back though, Marissa, were you, I think I was looking at the map, but were you the one who was saying you think that we will not have enough money?
Right. I think that you're probably right that you're going to need, I mean, what did you say you had? 3.5 million to do that whole thing?
If it gets approved.
Yeah, I think that you're gonna need more than that. So, and I think also, you know, one of the things probably to talk about in further, you know, future meetings is what is the village's role when you say, you know, when you're trying to inspire development? Can you make money off of selling some of these lots? I don't know, right? There's a lot to figure out in that. But how do you support building out this entire property? I think it'll be more than 3.5 million. So if you have the ability to grant right now for additional funds, it seems like this would be a good opportunity to try to do that. I don't know anything about this program though. I don't know.
Yeah, it's, you know, I think I almost feel we have to try to help so the burden's not, to lessen the burden on the taxpayer and to make
Mhm.
these homes more affordable. I think it's a win-win. You know, I will say this, I looked at round one of this grant and it all went to places, Milwaukee, you know, big city places. So I really don't think we stand a chance, but I think we have to try.
I think you have to try because don't forget, sometimes smaller communities don't have the staff to be able to work on grants like this or the expertise or knowledge. Whereas those bigger cities have bigger departments. So maybe the smaller ones are just not asking.
It could be. I'm willing to do it. Like I said, we will have to come up with a plan. And the plan is basically, they tell you exactly what you're going to put in this document, you know, so they tell you you're going to list this X, Y, Z, and then you know, you put it in there. So, but we do have to offer it to the public and get their feedback to see what they think about it. So I'm willing to work on that. Like I said, if we do that, we would need what, you know, I'll come up with a draft. I can send it out to the group for comment. We can make changes, you know, that way or meet as well, but we will have to move pretty quick on that if you guys are okay with that. So Marissa's okay with going for the grant. Who else? Kay, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I'm all about it. I think, you know, if you don't, you won't get anything. You've got to try. It's just like, you know, playing the lottery. You can't complain if you don't win, if you don't play. So, and I'm more than willing to put in the time that's needed. You know, like I said, it's time that we start projects. People have been waiting 4 or 5 years now. People have been talking about it and talking about it. It's time to see some ground being broken for these projects because people are in desperate need and they're going to leave if we don't have adequate housing.
Lauren, what are your thoughts? Lauren must got busy. Raz, what are your thoughts?
I'm all for it, for this, like Marissa said, or like Kay. I like people that are gonna start moving out. I know, like I have a lot of friends, you know, living in like I live with, and I'm surrounded about people who really wants like to buy a house like this, you know. So and all I talk with them was about these houses, and all of them they was like to buy our house, you know. People like me which have like 3 kids, you know, I'd like to have my house, you know. And yeah, I'm all for it. And Kay is right, people they're gonna start moving out and they're gonna start going, I don't know, Green Bay, others, like even us, we was considering to move to South Florida in one point, but that was like last year. But we decided we'll stay here because we want our kids to grow here. And yeah, I don't know, I'm all for it. If I can help with something, I'll be here. If you guys need something, even
Okay.
with work.
Yeah. Patrice, what are your thoughts as chair?
Yeah, I think we should definitely go for this grant. It is totally worth trying to do this for Sister Bay and our young families and our seniors and people that desperately need some type of housing.
I would say this too, you know, even if we're not successful on this grant, when you write a grant, at least you've got that you can kind of plug into other grant applications, right? So if there's not this one, you can use it on something else to maybe keep going and trying. Okay, well, I will move forward with that then. So Patrice, that's all I had. So we're down to number 6, matters for future agenda.
Does anybody on the committee have anything they want to be placed on the next agenda?
Clearly, we'll have that grant. And then on one of the upcoming ones, we'll have Stantec come in. But, and if anything else, like, and if there's anything else though, let me know.
I'm here. Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself fast enough. Before I'll email everyone on the board the Wilson Committee information just so people can maybe take a look at it to see what was, you know, just information that was presented to the board, just so there's some background. I don't know if that needs to be an agenda item, but I do think it's important to take that into consideration because that work has already been done.
Sure. So about the grant, Lauren, did you have comments about the
Oh,
grant?
no, I agree. Let's go for it.
Okay.
I mean, I think we might as kind of what Kay was saying, like we gotta get going, and I think the momentum will help us no matter what, you know, even if we don't get it. We'll be
Okay.
moving in the right direction.
Okay. And then, so as far as then back to the agenda, then just next thing, we'll work on that plan that we need for the grant. And then at that or the next, we would have Stantec come in and work with us on the plan. Okay. All right, item 7, Patrice, because that's, I think.
Yeah,
what-
we need to set a time for the next meeting and any speakers that we want to invite.
Yes, and so it helps if we have a standing date and time that we meet, like Parks meets the first Monday of the month at a certain time, and Plan Commission meets the last Tuesday of the month at a certain time. I think it would help us because it was challenging getting this meeting scheduled. I felt bad because we couldn't get a time that everybody could meet. Everyone is here right now except Lori and Gustavo, but I believe Gustavo, I know originally was going to be able to make it. So I don't know. Does this time work for everybody? Do you want to have a set time, or do you want to just do a doodle poll every time?
I think we
A
should have a
set
set time.
Right, yeah.
I agree.
Does this,
Yeah, this time
Uh,
works for me.
okay, so let me see what we got.
Depends on the Tuesday, though.
Pardon me?
Depends on which Tuesday are my board meeting days generally. The WHLC is every other month. The third Tuesday, DCHP is the third Tuesday.
Okay, so this is the third Tuesday. What time are those meetings at?
Hey, I think we're switching that DCHP meeting because I have a conflict on the afternoon on the third Tuesday as well. So I don't know that that's gonna stay at that
Oh,
time.
okay.
So we're at the
Okay,
third
okay, I just
Tuesday.
know the next, yeah.
We're at the third Tuesday
Yeah,
right
on the
now at 11. Does that work?
Works for-
WHLC is every other month at 9. So that might be cutting it close on some days, and it might not, just depends on what's on our agenda.
Okay, without,
I mean, I could always come in a little bit late if need be, but
okay,
if you wanted to just keep it at this time on the third Tuesday, that's fine too.
Raz, I know at first you had a hard time. I know you're working. Does this time work for you?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm very good with I can talk anytime. So
Julie, are you looking for an in-person or a hybrid meeting? I only ask because the third Tuesday of October, the large meeting room at the fire station is not available.
So, I know Raz, you prefer in person, and I think,
I mean, it's up to everybody. We can talk same like here.
yeah.
I would just like to
Yeah.
say October is such an insane month. I think hybrid would get more of us able to attend.
Okay, I think
Maybe
too-
November we can meet in person.
Okay, I was gonna say maybe this next one stay hybrid in case, because we're actually gonna have to meet before that next meeting if we're going for that grant, okay? So there's
Yeah,
gonna have to be a
definitely.
meeting in there, but when we're reviewing documents like that, I think it is easier on the screen. Or if the engineer comes in and draws on a map, I think it's easier because he can sketch it and you can see it. So let's maybe the next meeting or two stay hybrid, and then after that, maybe we can go back, maybe we can do in person. So, okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, so third Tuesday at 11 for October, and then of course in October, we'll discuss the November meeting, so, okay.
Is that gonna be enough time for you, Julie, for the grant? Do you need us to have a meeting before you submit the grant?
Oh, yeah, you're definitely gonna have to meet before it. I have
Yeah.
to get I have to get a draft plan put together. You're gonna have to review it and discuss it. It's your plan. We're gonna have to have public comment on it. You know, I think taking everything we have so far, plus what Lauren's gonna send me, we should have a pretty good record of the history, the barriers and everything. We have the data, it's just pulling it all together and having it be competitive. But so we'll be meeting again, but as far as our normal meeting, it would be the third Tuesday at 11, knowing we're gonna have to have special meetings in there to get this plan and this grant done. Okay, so that's all I have. So I guess we're on number 8.
So, we do need a motion to adjourn.
So move.
That was Marissa, I think.
That was Kate. That was
That was
Kate.
Kate.
Me.
Okay, who's gonna second it?
Second.
Lauren. All right.
Okay, meeting adjourned at 12:20.